Thank you for the warm welcome. And Jessica, any song that has to do with the cross is always appropriate on a Sabbath morning. Let me introduce myself. Actually, at 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I had no idea I was going to be your speaker this morning. I asked if I could have a few minutes to make an announcement, and yet here I am. And so we're happy to be here. This is my wife, Jan. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then get into it. I am a Midwesterner by birth and upbringing. I kind of bookend Indiana. I was born in Ohio, where my dad was a pastor. And then my teen years were spent in the western suburbs of Chicago. So I'm a graduate of Broadview Academy. No longer there, but still proud to have been a graduate of there. And then Andrews University. And I spent 45 years working in Adventist education. Even though you grew up in the Midwest, most of my career was either on the East Coast or the West Coast. I've been at a one teacher school, multi-teachers, an academy principal, and a conference education superintendent over the years. And like any job, it has its moments, but it was a job I loved and proud to say that I worked for the Adventist church that time. During that time as a teacher, I had the privilege and the opportunity of taking students on mission trips on different occasions. I've taken them to Dominican Republic, Mexico, Guatemala, the Navajo Reservation in Monument Valley, Utah a couple times, Puerto Rico, and personally have gone on trips to Haiti and to Cuba, and always found them quite rewarding. And last year, I retired from being an academy principal in the Southeastern Conference of California. We were living in Loma Linda, California. But we're back in the Midwest, and now we live in Goshen and go to the Elkhart Church. And during my time in Southern California, and I always find it interesting how the devil will try to do something, God seems to make good things come out of it. I had a student when I was the principal at Loma Linda Academy who got himself into trouble. And instead of just taking his punishment, because it was a serious enough thing, he tried throwing all kinds of people under the bus. And so in dealing with all the false accusations, I had the opportunity to meet the parents of one of the kids that was being falsely accused of doing something they shouldn't have been doing, which led me to find out that he was the president of a ministry called Changing People's Lives. They are a self-supporting independent ministry located there in Loma Linda, California, and after becoming acquainted with that, I started becoming involved with it and finally ended up on their board of directors. And that is Pastor Alicio Lozano, who is the president. So if you pull up the webpage, or if you want to look on your phone, cplives.org, that is there, I think. Yeah, there we go. There's some pictures there of what our website is. That's the home page there, and you can scroll on down through there and see some different things. That picture on the right with the groups of people there, that's taken in Puerto Rico, and you'll see me in the back of that row of people there because I had taken a group of academy students to Puerto Rico where we cleaned beaches for municipalities that had been affected by the hurricane and other adverse weather. And then there's a section there that says, why are we different? And I want to highlight some of those. You can read through that on your own, but why are we different? Most of the projects that CPO and it carries out in their initiatives sponsor and lead, we sponsor and lead happen in places where very few are willing to participate due to several circumstances that range from political situations all the way to forbidding territories. The gospel to communist countries has been sort of the goal of changing people's lives. We use non-traditional, simple, and inexpensive ways to reach out and make a difference. CPL does not practice traditional ways of doing evangelism. And I'll share with some of those with you in a minute. The focus of everything we do in ministry is the people. Taking the gospel commission seriously to go and teach. We do develop a relationship of mutual respect and understanding with government authorities in those countries where we have the privilege to serve in ministry. And then we have humanitarian assistance, spiritual outreach, and mission experiences. And so then I want to talk to you about some of that. You can, if you want to click on where it says divisions of service, you'll see some of the other things we do. I just noticed he spelled my last name wrong. It's an easy pronounce, Kropik, hard to spell. My parents are from the Czech Republic, what's now the Czech Republic. And several years ago, a friend of ours who worked in a pharmaceutical company that had to change her password every week on her computer because of the research they were doing, told us one Sabbath that she had used my last name as her password because even if you heard it, you wouldn't be able to spell it. And so, but I did notice that they didn't have it quite right. So there you have the different divisions of service and that sort of thing. And the achievements, I would invite you to spend some time looking at the website and see just exactly what we do at changing people's lives. Here are some of the countries that we are working in. North Korea. Now that may sound like, wow. And every time I think about it, it's a wow. Our president, Pastor Lozano, has been there over 20 times. And one of the things that we have been doing there is what they call a spiritually contaminated blanket. And I'll tell you, I got a list here of some of the things. We have a blanket. Here's sort of a sample of the kind of material it is. It's quilted, and it has we open it up, and we put some hard currency in it, pieces of plastic with a portion of the Word of God, and Bible studies from Lonnie Meloshenko, who used to be the speaker at Voice Prophecy. That's obviously translated into the Korean language, and some vitamins and some much needed dried food. Now, the government has asked the CPL if they would provide these blankets because they know that people are dying. They lose several thousand people every winter because of just not enough food, not too cold, etc. So we provide them with these blankets. And they're put together in China and then shipped from China to North Korea. And for an extra $2 a blanket, they put in a little circuit board, for lack of a better term, just a tiny little thing. And the North Korean government uses soldiers to pass out these blankets all around the country, unwittingly knowing evangelists, because after about 6 to 8 weeks, the blanket starts to buzz and vibrate in one corner of the blanket, and it keeps, and eventually people start, what is going on here? And they'll open the blanket. Now this, in my little sample here, is just Velcroed open. But it's not Velcro, it's sewn shut again. Excuse me. And they can pull out some money, they pull out the Bible studies, they pull out the dried food, and they have a chance to see a portion of God's Word in their own language. And if you are born in North Korea, you automatically are a member of a religion where the president is the God. And so that is one of the things that we do in North Korea. Another thing is helium balloons that we have done there. We have a 1 meter, 3 feet in diameter material, and the whole outside of the balloon is white with portions of the Gospel of John printed on it in Korean on the outside of the balloon. And when the wind's in the right direction from wherever they're launching them, off they go. And in there, they got, again, currency, seeds, literature, a hand crank radio. You've seen them where you crank the radio and it becomes a flashlight. It plays the radio. You have to put up the antenna, and I was going to bring one along and forgot. But the interesting thing is the radio only gets Adventist World Radio. It's the only stations that it can pick up because they've set it in such a way that that's the only thing that you can listen to. Now, if they're lucky, they may get a couple hours of electricity a day, except for the capital city. That, if you've ever gone on the internet and looked at pictures of lights on at night taken from satellites, if you look at North Korea, there's a little dot kind of in the middle of the country, which is Pyongyang, the capital city. It has lights on. The rest of the country is dark. And so the flashlight, everybody loves getting one of those flashlights. And then they understand that it becomes a radio, and they get to hear God's word through a flashlight that arrived on a helium balloon, carried many miles, or I guess kilometers in that part of the country. And they do that. In Laos, another communist country in Southeast Asia, we have what we call toilet evangelism. Exactly. Now, if you look at a map of the Laos, the Mekong River, and for those of you that are old enough, like I am, to have lived through the Vietnam War area, you know about being on the Mekong River and all that. It goes pretty much the length of the country. It goes in, or it is the border of the country. And villages along that river would use but it's the same place where they were getting their water supplies, where they're doing their laundry, cleaning up their pots and pans. And so what CPL has done is we will go to a village and build a cement block building that has a toilet and cleaning facilities and washing facilities, and even a room where you can have small groups have a meeting. And they will designate times. You'll get a ticket for when it's your turn to go use the toilet during certain hours. But there will be a ladies' time, there will be a men's time when you can go there. And while people are gathered around the village toilet, this new facility, there will be a lay pastor there talking to them and witnessing to them, talking about healthful ways they can live healthier than just going down to the river and using a stick instead of toilet paper and that sort of thing. And so that is another thing that we're doing in Laos. And then in other parts of Southeast Asia that they don't really want to publish is they are working to rescue girls from human trafficking. And then in Venezuela and the Ukraine, we have, which are not technically communist countries, although Venezuela has become very socialist, they are there to help refugees and provide help to those that are either in Ukraine trying to escape the war, or just the bad social atmosphere in Venezuela. And in Cuba, we've been providing lay pastors, and that is the reason I'm here today, is to talk about Cuba. Cuba is a country where life is difficult. The government sets the price of goods, the salaries, or what you get paid for your work, your rents, your availability of food. You get a ration card, and if food's available, then you get your monthly rations. Your health care, what's on TV, what's on the radio, when you get electricity and more. In fact, one person said there's no food, no electricity, and no hope in Cuba. The average pay was, the last time I went, was about $18 a month because everything was regulated. If you were a doctor, you might get as much as $25 a month, U.S. And there's the Cuban dollar peso, I think, is what it is. So changing people's lives was paying their lay pastors there $20 a month. But unfortunately, because of the deteriorating conditions in Cuba, you may have read in Adventist Review, 50% of the pastors that were in Cuba have left the country to go somewhere else because they just weren't able to survive with their families there. CPL's been organizing mission trips. And so if you'll show the first one of those videos, it's a slideshow of a mission trip that took place June. There's several trips that have taken place over the last year. So go ahead and start it up.
Despierta hasta las 2 de la 3. Bautizo en el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu.
Sí lo entregamos.
I think that used to be an Adventist church decades ago.
Yes. Amén.
That would be a home church. Okay, thank you. We'll play the other one later. In the fall of 2019, I was able to go to Cuba. It was just a few months before we locked down with COVID in January, and there were 6 of us that went. We took clothing, Bibles, and Bible picture rolls. Now, you remember if you went to Sabbath school as a kid, if you're my age or somewhere close, and you had the memory verse roll that every week there was a new memory verse and the picture roll went up. What we had were Bible rolls that were that same thing. They came in a tube and they had Bible studies, and you went through a series of Bible studies using the picture roll because not everybody there, seemed like, well, I can't remember now who put that out for us. Like there was another one of the independent ministries, like AFM or something like that, or Remnant up in Michigan maybe. But we had 36 of those that we took with us, and about 1,000 pounds of clothing. And that itself was an answer to prayer, because when we got to the airport in Miami with all this clothing, duffel bags full of clothing, probably, 1,000 pounds extra, which, the airlines could have charged us a whole bunch. But American Airlines, after talking with the supervisor there at the ticket counter, didn't charge us anything additional than what we'd already paid for airfare to get to Cuba. So, and then when we got to Cuba, the gentleman in charge of customs, again, this was interesting. He said that one of his girlfriends was an Adventist, and so he wasn't going to charge us for bringing all this extra clothing and material into the country. And so we had all that with us, and on Sabbath we visited several churches, fellowship and sharing clothes and Bibles all day long and well into the night. Many of them were home churches. There was one young couple, looked to be maybe in their late 20s, early 30s, that had acquired a house, and they had converted the living room, the dining room, and one of the bedrooms of their house into a meeting room. You saw with all the chairs and everything, and then the one bedroom was for the children to meet. And they lived in just one bedroom in the kitchen. That was really the only part of the house they kept for themselves. Everything else, they had dedicated their house into being a church for their area. Now, the country itself is a beautiful tropical island. The people were friendly, and they are so poor and in need of hearing a message of hope. We did see some of the old cars that you hear about in Cuba, and some of them I'm kind of a car guy myself, but I was amazed at how they had cobbled together cars to keep them running, and the back end of one car hooked onto the, kind of reminded me of the old Johnny Cash song about one piece at a time, the way some of the cars looked. And yet they were going down the road, and they were proud to have it. The conference office for the central part of Cuba where we were working out of, the conference president had available to use, I think anybody there in the conference could use it when they needed to, was an old 54 Ford, just like the one my grandmother was driving when I was growing up on the outside, but it didn't have the original engine or the original interior. So poor and so need of to hear a message of hope. And two things stood out from that Sabbath day. We were visiting one church, and we met a young man who was the local lay pastor. And because sometimes it was difficult for CPL to get money into the country, either has to be taken over individually by somebody, sometimes because we have an office in Canada. Sometimes we were able to send Canadian money to Cuba because the relationship with the Canadian government is different than the relationship with the U.S. government. Anyhow, he hadn't been paid that month, and they asked me if I could pay for his salary. So I took a $20 bill out of my wallet, and now he was able to survive for the rest of the month because he had had his monthly salary. Less than half of what it takes to put a full tank of gas in my car is what he lived on for a whole month. And he was thrilled that now he could keep sharing the gospel instead of looking for a job. And another church we went to, we met a lay pastor there that didn't even have a Bible. He was taking part of his $20 a month that he was getting and renting a Bible from a couple that belonged to another denomination so that he could go out and give Bible studies with his rented Bible. And We had brought several paperback Bibles in Spanish with us, but we had one leather-bound Spanish-English Bible along, and we presented it to him. And the look of joy and gratitude and reverence on his face. Well, I guess I'm getting old because it still gets me. Had all of us old guys, old enough to be his grandfather, wiping her eyes. Anyhow, on Sunday morning, we kept going to churches. They were going to meet. They knew we were coming. They wanted to meet with us. And so we kept meeting at churches, having a church service. I mean, it may sound strange that Adventists were meeting on Sunday morning, but we were there. They wanted to see us. We met with them on Sunday. We gave out picture rolls. We shared more clothing and shoes. Even had a baby dedication at one of the churches. And then on Sunday afternoon, we stopped at a Baptist church. And I was working at Loma Linda Academy at the time. And I talked to the band director. Oh, thank you. I talked to the band director there, and we had some musical instruments that we were never going to use that were in really good shape. And if I remember right, they were Selmer, so they were just made down the road in Elkhart, probably. And so I had taken 2 saxophones and 2 flutes with me to give away. And we stopped at a Baptist church, and we shared a saxophone and a flute with the music leader of that church. He was a young man, I think in his early 20s, and he had some of them with him. It's kind of like a praise team that they had there. And he was so thrilled. He had a mouthpiece for a saxophone. He did not have a saxophone. And he would borrow or rent a saxophone when he could get it, and he had his own mouthpiece. And he told us that in order, and this was an instrument I would probably be able to buy or sell on Facebook Marketplace for maybe $150. But we weren't going to ever use them again at the academy. Kind of leftovers and been donated when kids had moved on, etc. It would take him 3 years of salary if he didn't buy anything else with his salary except save it for his 3 years of salary to buy an instrument like that. And he was just thrilled to have it. And so he and the girl that got the flute gave us a wonderful duet of a song that they used in their church to thank us for that. And we also left them a picture roll at the Baptist church. So the Baptist church was now going to be able to give Bible studies using Adventist literature for their for that, because, you know, we do share a universal gospel. And we were able to do a bit of sightseeing for part of the day while we were there. We had landed in Santiago de Cuba, the second largest city of the country, which is the home of the Castro brothers, where they were born and raised and grew up, and so and where the revolution started in 1959. So we went to the Revolution Museum. And also in Santiago de Cuba is San Juan Hill. And being a teacher and a bit of a history geek, San Juan Hill is where Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders made their famous charge. And so after spending 4 or 5 days there and hearing about the anti-American propaganda, it was interesting to go to the park where they had put up memorials in the early part of the 20th century thanking the United States for coming and saving Cuba from the oppression of Spain. And while you see it on the history, in the history books, it looks like it was way out in the country. It probably was in 1898, and now it's just kind of like on the edge, any park on the edge of a suburban part of town. On the Sabbath, as we were driving around to the different parts of the country and the different churches, We actually drove through the town of Guantanamo. And was very interesting as we were driving out of town. There were huge signs on the road in yellow and red. I mean, just like high visibility signs, in Spanish and in English, warning about stay on the road. There was a shoulder, I guess, if you had a flat tire or something, you could pull off, but to stay on the road because on both sides, and especially in the direction of the U.S. military base, it was all mines. It was a big minefield, and you were just, that was kind of interesting after all the things you hear about Guantanamo Bay. So as the trip came to an end, I came home with just a change of shirt and my toothbrush and my backpack, because everything else I ended up leaving there. That wasn't my intention when I left, but it was what ended up happening because the need was so great. Just what I was wearing, because I had to spend the night in Miami the night as we were flying back because of the schedule. And so that was what happened for me. Well, now the Elkhart Church is leading a trip to Cuba from February 24 to March 3 coming up. And I'm here. The whole reason I wanted to just come and, can I make a short little announcement? I want to invite any of you that might be interested in going to come along and join us. Because we've got people from California, from Tennessee, relatives and friends of people in the Elkhart Church that are going to be joining us to go. You would leave here on Monday the 24th, fly to Miami, or I guess you can drive. You might have to leave on the 23rd then. But to get to Miami, because we have on Tuesday morning, the 25th, we have to be at the airport by 6 o'clock in the morning. We're all going to go the night before and stay, get a hotel, motel room. And we're not telling people which one to use because we don't know who's got points or whatever. You get to Miami on your own. And then you join the group. We'll meet up with Pastor Lozano, and we'll go from Miami to a different part of Cuba. And here's what we're going to be doing while we're there. We'll arrive in Havana Tuesday morning. We're going to visit the printing press and seminary. We'll have a brief tour of the capital city and then depart for Santa Clara, Cuba, and arrive at the Villa Perla Mission, and we'll be staying in a government-registered guest house. Then on Wednesday, some Native lay ministries, an outline of understanding the communist system there and how that affects us, the home church concept, and some visitation. Then after lunch would be the first meeting of an evangelistic crusade, a health seminar, vacation Bible school. So if you're more inclined to work with the children, there's vacation Bible school. If you have some medical or healthful living experience, there's that. And then, preaching in the evangelistic meeting. And, like I said, the pastor at one church didn't even have a Bible. So we're not looking, I love that you're going to be doing a Daniel seminar, but we're not looking to do that because most people that don't have a Bible to read and haven't read the Bible. What we want to tell them is what God has done for us in our lives and what he can do for them. So there's then on Thursday, Women to Women conference and some more preaching, health assistance at a local church. And again, a seminar on Friday, an outreach project, either painting of a government facility or some beach cleaning, and then some more, again, the evangelistic meeting, health seminar, VBS. On Sabbath, we're going to be going in 4 different directions to different house churches, providing a speaker for them during that, and an evangelistic crusade. And then Saturday evening is the last meeting of the evangelistic crusade. And then on Sunday, some sightseeing and going to the beach. And then on Monday, saying our goodbyes and coming back. And so the cost of the trip is only $1,400, and that includes Miami to Cuba, back to Miami, and 2 meals a day with ground transportation. And so this is what I'm hoping that someone here will be able to, and if you know of somebody, like I said, we got friends and relatives of people in the Elkhart Church that live all over the country that are coming to join. So if you know somebody that might be interested, and I have some materials to share with anybody that's interested, I'll take them to the meal, or after church I can meet you back there and share some materials with that, including the schedule. So if you're able to join us, great. And if not, we understand, but please pray for this trip. Pray for those that are going. Consider donating towards the cost of the trip to help those that may want to go and have the ability and time to go, or buy a Bible or two to send along. The current regulations have changed since I was there. You're allowed to bring in 2 Bibles. Now, most of us have a Bible on our phone now. And so even if I would say that it would be at least all Spanish, and if you could find one that's English Spanish, and they're on Amazon, I've looked, and I'm sure they're at other places too. Consider getting a Bible to send along with somebody that's going, or make a donation to Changing People's Lives, or whatever mission your church is doing. Make sure that you're part of that. So regardless of whether you go or not, whether you can donate to the project or not, continue to share this gospel. As it says in Matthew, to go therefore and teach. I like that because I'm a teacher. It didn't say go and preach, it says go and teach all nations. And sharing the gospel, this good news, the gospel that we're looking forward to, so that our Savior Jesus will return soon. So as the other video plays, just want to say thank you for the opportunity of sharing, and God bless each and every one of you.
Okay,